Coming up next on the SPNN Forum, live from the Kwame McDonald studio, we have Karen McCauley and Jessica Kopp with the Midway Food and Empowerment Project. Hi, welcome to the SPNN Forum. I'm Martin Ludden, Executive Director at the St. Paul Neighborhood Network, and we're here in the Kwame McDonald studios with Karen McCauley and Jessica Kopp of the Midway Food and Empowerment Project. Welcome to the forum.
Thank you.
So let's start real basic. What is the Midway Food and Empowerment Project?
Well, for short, we call it the Midway Project.
Okay.
Just because it gets to be kind of a mouthful.
Yeah.
And it began almost a year ago. It was at the end of May of 2020, and in our Midway neighborhood, we were noticing that our neighbors were having a difficult time accessing basic food, essential supplies. And so we wanted to create a centralized hub that was easy to access, that had reliable sources of food and other essential items. And that was the reason it began.
Was this, were you noticing those food shortages and lack of supplies? Was that a direct result of kind of the uprisings and unrest following the murder of George Floyd, or was this an existing problem that got worse?
It was both, really. Having been both very active in our school community at Hamlin Elementary, we already knew that our families had issues with that, and we had a sharing pantry and a sharing closet in our family room at the school for that purpose. But then when the uprisings following the murder of George Floyd, so many of our shops and stores shut down that you couldn't even get food locally. And so that sort of arose out of that immediate need that was happening, that was also already being exacerbated by COVID.
Yeah, so this is a project of the Hamlin Midway Coalition, but it grew out of kind of existing efforts in the school as well?
I think what we were able to do because of the existing relationships we had through our work with the Hamlin Midway Coalition and the elementary school, we were pretty quickly able to stand up this mutual aid site.
Nice.
It happened, I want to say, and Karen will maybe remember, I think within 4 days or 5 days of some key community partners coming together, we had our first distribution.
Okay.
And it was a big one. And in that summer, we were seeing, just lines of cars, folks maybe seen that on the news, and we were able to provide. And week after week, we just continued to do that. But it was built out of those existing partnerships that it happened so quickly.
Who are those other community organizations you're working with?
So it began with it was a former community organizer, Melissa Mishner, who is no longer with the Hamlin Midway Coalition, but she really was the heart of this project getting going. And so we asked Hancock Recreation Center if we could distribute there. We worked with Celtic Junction to receive donations.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been in their space, they had this huge studio that was full.
Oh, wow.
Floor to ceiling, tables full of donations that were coming in rapidly. And so just with those two key partners at the beginning, and then we had some other folks come in as well.
Yeah, the Sana Foundation has been really important in our partnership, and we continue to work with all of those organizations, but they came in and have the capacity to provide fresh produce and things that we didn't have the capacity to store or move around. So, and we've continued to work with them as well to provide those kinds of things to our neighbors.
Cool, and they have a built-in kind of constituency too.
Yes.
To distribute.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So how has this evolved as you've, over the last year? Does it look the same now that it did then, or what's different?
Well, I'm reflecting on the different weather patterns that we've experienced. In the summer, it was like, oh my gosh, it's so hot. We need these, we had these tents we had to put up to keep the heat out, and then all the way through like rain and snow of winter. We've continued to, some things that are the same, we've continued to make it a curbside system of sharing, simply because of COVID restrictions, and also just ease and comfort of our neighbors coming through. We have, as donations, both monetary and kind of like material donations have kind of waxed and waned, we've had to adjust what we're able to offer. And so we basically plan month to month, and which is not I would say, I think I can speak for both of them. Like, it's not our usual way. We're both planning people and like to think longer term, and we've really just had to say, this is what we have and this is what we can do for the next 4 weeks. So there's been some growth and some learning with that, and we also have grown to adapt more to our neighbors' specific needs. It's less about here's what we have, it's what do you need, and then going out and securing those items and making them available.
So what are you distributing? I mean, I think it's what I've seen April, and you've got May coming up. And so what kind of things are you handing out, and how does that work?
Well, it can vary from week to week, as Jessica said. Sometimes we'll have a partner organization coming in and offering treat bags for families that have kids. So Resurrection City Church has come in a couple of times, and they did school supplies one week, and then they did little treat bags for the kids, kind of like spring May Day baskets. We try to have baby care every other week if we can, because that seems to be something that's not as readily available at some of the mutual aid sites around the cities because it's expensive stuff. And so we try to make sure we have that to offer every other week. And then the Sana Foundation provides a box that has dairy and meat and produce in it, and they've been helping us with that since September in different forms. So that we will have this week. Sometimes we have things like soccer balls or books or board games that have been donated by a community company. And
cool.
Basically, we can distribute just about anything. And we also, another thing we've grown into being able to do is when there's a neighborhood or citywide issue, we're able to bring in organizations who might want to talk to neighbors about that, to do kind of that really direct, like, here, like we had folks from the rent stabilization efforts come in, and they provided information, answered questions, and families, people who are interested in signing the petition, that was an opportunity. And it's all done with the idea that that's the empowerment part of it. It's not just things to give and share. It's also empowering people to be sufficient and well and healthy in their community. And so we welcome organizations to come in and do those things as well.
That makes good sense. So you're tailoring kind of your asks out to the community based on what you're hearing. You take what you can get. And then is this is it drive-through? Like, do people come up and tell you what they need and you go get it, or is it just like a box of what you have?
Well, so it kind of varies. So I can describe what we did last week, and it will probably look different.
Might be different
next week. And so it begins with a simple check-in, and that's my job. And so we have a few questions, mostly because like the Sana Foundation, and even when we had a Ramsey County grant, we have to collect some data to share and report back. And so I just have a few questions. There's no, we don't have any income limit. No, you don't have to prove your need. You don't have to provide ID. It's really if you say you would like to be there, then you get to be there, and that's we're very easy breezy about that. And I just answer some questions, and I always preview what we have coming up. And so it might be a bag of non-perishable items that have been pre-packed. Then I'll let them know we have baby items, and then I'll always look in what's in the box we get from Sana, and I'll share that. So there's that little bit of a conversation. Last week I handed out a new schedule, and what I have found doing that introduction or doing that conversation is that's when I learn the most about our neighbors. And so that's when they might say, I'm moving, or we have a new baby, or we have, and so then those things become part of our planning. And so I do that check-in, and then I write on, so this might be more detailed than anyone requires, but it's really made our system pretty efficient. I take a Post-it note, and because we have neighbors who pick up for other neighbors, or families who don't have access to transportation, or if like 12 o'clock on a Wednesday is not super convenient, we have neighbors who pick up for one another. And so I'll just write how many families and the number of people in the families, and I put it on the passenger side of the on the car, and then they go through kind of we just have tables set up with volunteers at every station to greet and welcome, and we talk a lot. It takes a long time to get through the line because we're a chatty group, but that's something we really like about what we do.
Yeah. Well, that's the community part of it.
Right. Oh, and we had dog food. We had dog food.
Right on.
And cat food.
And cat food this week. Last week. We've gotten to know a lot of our neighbors. We've had some of the same. It's 50 to 60 families. It depends. It can be less than that. And we've gotten to know many of them. And so we know one has 5 dogs, one has a 140-pound dog, one has, and so one has a beautiful garden, and we've gotten him some seed starting stuff. And
Cool.
yeah, last week the dog food was big. It's a big hit because that can be very expensive as well.
Yeah, like dog food and baby supplies are, I mean, that's a huge, those are huge investments. So you said 50 to 60 families. Is that a standard week? Like, has it been more? Kind of what's the...
It was a little more unpredictable over the summer. We had people coming from farther out of the zip code. We had people coming from Brooklyn Center or further out suburbs. It's kind of become a little more localized to the Midway and little surrounding neighborhoods since then.
Okay.
And some weeks we'll have very few, and we're wondering, well, great, maybe everybody's doing better, or we don't want to have to be out there every week. The goal is to put ourselves out of business. But and then we were back up then again last week.
Okay.
And so that's another thing we kind of don't know from week to week necessarily, but we can kind of look through our heads and go, we're missing this person, or we haven't seen her, or we haven't seen him, and we can gauge whether or not we have some more people that might still be coming that day.
Does that trigger follow-up then? Like, if you miss somebody for a couple of weeks, is there a way to kind of reach out and say, hey, is everything okay?
We don't have that kind of information. I mean, and that's one of those things we've gone back and forth, like, would there be a way, or do people want that?
Yeah.
And what we have found is that, like, I know last week a neighbor said, I'm having surgery next week, so I won't be here. And so I was like, okay, do you need extra things for next week? And so we have built, we like to call it a community of care and like trust with our neighbors. And so as they wish to offer that information to us, we can receive that and support them, and when they come back that we can, check in and see how they're doing and all of that. But I think right now it seems to work as is.
Okay. Yeah. If you're just joining us, we're here in the Kwame McDonald studios at SPNN with Jessica Kopp and Karen McCauley talking about the Midway project. You've said a couple of times in the course of the conversation here that this is mutual aid. And I think, for me, that's a concept that's really come into focus over the last year. But can you talk a little bit about kind of what that means and what's at the heart of that concept that brings things like this project around?
I really think of it as neighbors helping neighbors, and we're sharing with each other and for each other and working in partnership with other organizations to try to meet whatever needs our neighbors and our neighborhood have.
Yeah, it's a giving and sharing with one another, and there's I don't know where the saying came from, but I remember reading it somewhere where someone who received help from someone, said, I wish I could help you, what can I do? And then the person replied, today you, tomorrow me. And so the idea is that, like, we're in a position with our partners and our neighbors to organize to support our neighbors, and that if we do this well, that we establish something that allows all of us to give and receive when we need to.
I like that. And that's, kind of that centering it in the community is really cool. And now the Midway Project is not its own 501c3. So you're organized under the Hamlin Midway Coalition, and you have other partners that are nonprofits, that are established organizations. But it seems like a lot of this is really just straight, it's direct giving from community members with donations back out the door to community members who need it. And it's just like that hub. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think a hub is a good way to describe it. Like, we can have things basically come in and go out the same day. The idea is that we are generous with what we receive, and we're not looking to hoard it or hang on to it. We want to share it.
Right.
We don't have enough room to hold too much, but and sometimes we marvel at where we can get, like, what are we going to do with all this stuff? And then 2 weeks later, it's gone.
It works out.
Right, and so it's very much neighborhood supported. Volunteers come from the neighborhood. Sometimes local businesses will, but that was something that changed from the summer to now, was like the urgency or sort of that attention to that moment. It waned. Yep. Like, I don't know that we're wired as human beings to be that intense about something for a long period of time. So the challenges have been reminding people that our neighbors, were in need before, still are, and like what's our responsibility to one another, and what's our opportunity to build this community of care to be sustainable.
So how does this build towards, so it's two questions. How does this build towards sustainability, and kind of what are the greatest needs, I guess, both in donations and like infrastructure, as far as, getting it to sustainability?
It would be great to have a reliable source of funding so that we could plan when those donations aren't coming in, because it's hard to rely on that.
Yeah.
If we could plan on a calendar, and we could tell our neighbors, this week we're going to have this kind of bag and this kind of kit,
Yeah.
and they can know then whether or not they need to come down or not if we have something special going on.
Right.
And we're ready we have a plan. It's just a matter of if grant money comes down the line, or that would be a really nice thing to have, just so that we don't have to necessarily rely on something that can be unreliable.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we did, I think it was December, we received a grant from Ramsey County.
Oh, nice.
And we had to turn it around we were awarded the grant in I think 3 weeks. We had to spend a large sum of money, which was fine. Like
Yep.
it's a nice problem to have. And what was wonderful about that, as Karen said, we were able to really plan the things that we bought and shared. We put together household kits that had, just things to clean your house.
Yep.
Just, and like new rubber gloves, new, microfiber dust wipes, just things, because what we were hearing from our neighbors is everyone's home.
Right.
And you're looking at your house all day, and you want to, and that ability to be able to care for your home along with your family. Our neighbors love to cook, and that healing process that can happen just when your family is gathered around. So to be able to buy intentional, culturally specific ingredients that our neighbors want to cook with, not kind of what we have on hand.
Right.
And I think that was such a wonderful gift, to be able to have an abundance and also have really the kinds of things people would buy for themselves.
Yeah. And I imagine that's the challenge, right? It's like, what people can bring to donate and what needs to go, what people need don't always match.
Right. We could probably do a whole hour on just different things that have been interesting donated items that, like.
So we don't have an hour, but like, I'm curious, like top 3 oddities, and then also like, what do you need? What's the stuff that, like, what do you wish came in more?
Diapers. Diapers and wipes and formula are expensive items. They're necessary, and they go really fast, and they're not always available. So that has been our key. Beyond that, and then beyond that, I think into some of the personal care items that are also pretty expensive that we're able to provide when we have grant money or when we have a big donation from the neighborhood. But toothbrushes and toothpaste and shampoo and all of those things, it's nice to be able to provide those for our neighbors as well. And we would like to do that once a month, but we don't generally have the capacity anymore to do that, which would be really great.
Yeah.
As far as odd
particular
things,
sizes on diapers?
all of them, but especially 4 through 6 seem to be the most popular.
Yeah.
Although 1 week we'll run out of ones, and we don't know where that came from. Where did those babies come from? But
We had size 1s for so many months. We're like, where are all the size 1 babies? And then apparently they were.
There they were.
There they were, and then they were gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can always move diapers very quickly, and same with formula and baby wipes. And that's just, we're both moms, and like, if you're a parent, you want to be able to care for your little people. You want to make sure they're safe and well and happy. And so if we can do that, we know that's a big lift off people's shoulders. The oddities. Okay, so I'm going to have to go with the shrimp chips.
yeah, they look like they may have come from the 1970s.
Okay.
The packaging very much looks like this was in the very far back of someone's cupboard, and they just discovered them.
So we appreciate the effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There have been some odd used items that where you're wondering about the thought process, but okay, we don't know what's going on there either. Why I think the used essential oil diffuser
Okay.
was something that came in this summer.
Is that, speaking of that, not just oils, but do you need household items? I imagine that can get tricky. But what kind of stuff in that space?
I'm trying to think what we've had. Like, there have been times like when we've had donations where someone might have like a set of like dishes or pots and pans, and we've just kind of put them out
Yeah.
on like a choice table, and so we'll have a volunteer, we'll say, do you want anything here? And then, someone might say,
Yep.
oh, I'll take this or that. We have talked about maybe doing like a free event, kind of where, because we have an abundance of clothes, we have books, we have all kinds of things, and so we're trying to figure out how we might share items like that.
Have some kind of a sharing table that would probably be more of a walk-up because people would need to choose the clothes or sizes that they need. But that would be a question of capacity and volunteers and having enough people to just sort of help. So people could come through the regular distribution of food and other items and then possibly park and be able to walk up to tables to choose what they need and have enough volunteers to make sure that people are being safe and all of that, because we still have a pandemic.
Yeah, that will get easier, I hope.
Yeah.
Where are you drawing volunteers from, and what are your volunteer needs?
They're mostly, at this point, neighbors. We have college-age folks in their 50s and 60s. We've had, literally everyone. We had the lacrosse team from Hamlin University,
Cool.
who were
They were
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
We didn't have to move one box or one table. I was like, I love it.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
So, and we've had local businesses, come, and that was more in the summer, but we're just drawing from the neighborhood right now. And we have some reliable volunteers who come every week who just make all the difference in
They're
the world.
all-stars, yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to get more information on how to volunteer, where could they find that?
On the Hamlin Midway Coalition page, there's a page for the Midway Project, and on there is a link to a Sign Up Genius that you can sign up for shifts. I mean, it's not a very long day, but it is in the middle of the day, so it can be hard to get to, but you can sign up there.
Cool. And then on the other side of that, when are distributions, and how do people plug into that information?
So for the month of May, it's every Wednesday, and we begin at 12 noon and go to about 1:30.
Okay.
And sometimes we start a little earlier if we're ready, but definitely at noon. And we're usually there cleaning up past 1:30. And so if we happen to catch people as we're moving things inside, we're always happy to stop and assist. And
We can accept donations from 10 to 12 at Hancock Rec on a Wednesday before distribution. Ginkgo Coffee House is also collecting donations anytime during their business hours. And right now, Give Minnesota is running a Spring Forward campaign, so we do have a Midway Project page up for that, and you can find that we've been posting about it on Facebook and the Coalition's page, and you can search Give Minnesota for the Midway Project as well.
Very cool. And we'll get some graphics up for you on that. Final question, which completely escaped my mind. But for now, we'll say thanks for joining us. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the work you're doing. I think the mutual aid and community organizing that we're seeing is fantastic. So thank you for that. SPNN is on the edge of the Midway, so this is a neighborhood thing for us too. We've been here in the Kwame McDonald studios at SPNN with Karen McCauley and Jessica Kopp of the Midway Project. Please tune in to see us again soon. Thanks.